Hey, Will. So I'm just going to share with you um, how I work on observation and feedback. This is part of a presentation I did for MassQ last year. I was asked to come in and do this session and just kind of walk you through it. A big part of this work is just knowing that visioning starts with data. And I utilize a lot of our instructional priorities and how our students are performing from the past year to guide the work for the current year. So we work in just a very collaborative process to say, what do we, as we unpacked and did our five whys, what are we realizing in the data? And so when we saw that students were not reading at reading level in the way we wanted, or we saw that students weren't performing in the way we wanted them to in math and ELA on MCAS, that kind of drove the work. And so I also thought about how is it that I, as an instructional leader, can also do some better work to support my teachers in the community. And so what I learned, because we used the Insight Survey, which was created by TNTP, I needed to provide more observational feedback. I needed to have more follow up meetings and debrief. I needed to model and share best practices. And I needed to provide professional development experiences that explicitly demonstrated what we were teaching. And so, why are we doing it? Because 50% of the staff were saying, hey, we practiced a lot of the techniques um, with a peers or someone else. That means 50% were not, you know. And then I had 33% of staff that said, hey, we still are not getting the kind of support we needed. And so even though I saw growth in two other areas, it still meant to me 75% is not high enough. I just have such a high standard for practice that I wanted to see how could we drive the work forward. And so I thought, focus on walkthroughs and observations. They're different. Walkthrough to me is 3 to 5 minutes in duration, and this happens 2 or 3 times a day. It focuses on the look for, so I look and see. Do you have things I can physically see? So we are in remote learning, but if you weren't in remote learning, are there anchor charts? Are there actual guides around the space to help students be successful? Is there student workaround? So thinking about all of those things all those scaffolds that are super important for young people to thrive in an environment, are they present? Are we utilizing them in the learning experience? In remote learning, it's going to be a little different. So how can the teacher create community so students still have reference tools that they can go to support them? So it might be videos, it might be in a Google Classroom, like, here's some student work samples that are posted that have feedback that really drive and say, hey, this is really good work. An observation for me is 10 minutes or more. I'm going to focus on, how students are engaged. So based on the conversations, the academic discourse, I'm going to listen to students, not necessarily the teachers. I'm going to listen to them for the questioning, but I'm going to listen to the students to see what are they doing with the standard, how are they working and wrestling with that. And then I'm going to take notes and I'm going to take pictures of the look forwards in action. And I build both of them into my schedule. So the instructional look forwards are coming from feedback criteria. And I shared this before. We have instructional look forwards that were actually governed by BPS. And so I took the DESE guide, the DESE teacher rubric. I highlighted like well-structured lessons, a safe learning environment, two-way communication, professional collaboration. And then I did a deeper dive and said, we're going to look at this from the lens of how are educators providing feedback. And so that came from the BPS instructional essentials. And so we did a lot of work on these particular areas to say, well, what is it? What does it look like? Let's look at videos. Let's get really good at it. I did this in professional development, did this in our common planning time or CPT and instructional leadership time. In the beginning, I just gave, quick feedback. You're doing a great job on your learning targets. And I literally, took pictures of kids. Staff members told me they didn't want me to take pictures of them. I did pictures of the kids in action. And then I literally just quantify how many kids were actually working on success, working towards success based on the standard that they were hitting. And so I call this Operation Show and Tell. So I'll do part two in a moment.